The thieves did not target diamonds, cash, or gold. They targeted maple syrup. Over roughly a year, an organized crew secretly removed syrup from a Quebec warehouse, transported it through a network of trucks and tankers, and sold it outside the authorized system. The stolen product was worth more than 18 million Canadian dollars. But how could thousands of heavy barrels disappear from a warehouse without anyone noticing? And why did one unstable barrel reveal a crime so large that Quebec police launched their biggest investigation involving stolen physical property? Before this documentary ends, we will uncover how the warehouse was compromised, how syrup was disguised and resold, and why Canada's highest court later ordered one organizer to repay millions he no longer possessed. To understand why anyone would organize a multi-million-dollar syrup robbery, it is necessary to understand what maple syrup represents in Quebec. The product begins with sap, collected from sugar maple trees during a narrow seasonal window. That sap must be processed, concentrated, graded, stored, and distributed. Producing a single barrel requires labor, land, specialized equipment, and favorable weather. Unlike ordinary supermarket pancake syrup, pure maple syrup is an agricultural commodity with a regulated supply chain and a valuable international market. Quebec's maple industry operates through a collective marketing system. The organization known today as the Quebec Maple Syrup Producers coordinates bulk sales and maintains reserves intended to balance years of abundance against years when production is weaker. Federal regulations identify the Federation as the commodity board for Quebec maple syrup marketed in bulk across provincial or international borders. That reserve has often been described as a strategic stockpile. But it is not a secret underground vault. It consists of huge quantities of syrup stored in industrial barrels at secured facilities. The purpose is stability. When production is high, surplus syrup can be stored. When production falls or demand increases, reserves can help maintain supply. This created something unusual. Inside ordinary-looking rural warehouses sat agricultural inventory worth millions of dollars. Each barrel contained a product that could be transported, blended, and sold. And unlike stolen artwork or numbered bullion, syrup did not retain an obvious permanent identity once transferred into another container. That made it valuable and potentially difficult to trace. One reserve facility was a rented warehouse in Saint-Louis-de-Blandford, a small Quebec municipality northeast of Montreal. Inside were rows of metal barrels stacked several levels high. A full barrel could weigh hundreds of pounds. Removing one would normally require equipment. Removing thousands would require time, access, vehicles, and confidence that routine activity would not attract attention. According to the Supreme Court of Canada, Richard Valliere met Avik Caron in June 2011. The court found that they planned to steal maple syrup from a Federation warehouse and resell it through the black market. Caron was responsible for theft operations at the warehouse, while Valliere received and resold the stolen syrup. This was not a single-night burglary. The scheme depended on appearing ordinary. A truck arriving once might attract attention. Regular movement inside an industrial warehouse could appear to be legitimate business, especially if the people involved understood the facility's routines. Court records describe a method built around gradual extraction. Caron and his accomplices secretly removed hundreds of barrels using trucks, tankers, and pumps. Some syrup was transferred from the original barrels. Investigators found that stolen contents had sometimes been replaced with water or lower-grade syrup, allowing the barrels to remain in position and appear full. The deception exploited a simple assumption. A sealed barrel in the correct location appeared to be inventory. From the outside, nothing had necessarily changed. The warehouse still contained rows of metal drums, but the valuable product inside some of them had already entered an illegal supply chain. The thieves were not only stealing syrup, They were stealing time. Every substituted barrel delayed discovery. Every apparently undisturbed row allowed the operation to continue. The scale of the crime was possible because the warehouse did not immediately look empty. The stolen syrup passed through several people before reaching Valliere. He organized its resale and paid accomplices from the money collected. By his own admission, he received 10 million Canadian dollars in revenue from syrup obtained through theft or fraud, and made a personal profit approaching 1 million Canadian dollars before some expenses. A product worth millions is useful to criminals only if someone is willing to buy it. That required a second network beyond the warehouse. Distributors needed to accept syrup outside the authorized channels. Transporters had to move heavy loads. Paperwork had to make the product appear legitimate. Buyers might receive syrup without understanding its true origin, or might choose not to ask questions. The scheme also included syrup acquired directly from producers in violation of the Federation's marketing rights. Valliere purchased and resold syrup outside normal channels, avoiding the royalties and controls associated with authorized transactions. The Supreme Court treated the operation as both theft and fraud, with the criminal proceeds flowing through Valliere's hands. The distinction matters. Not every barrel involved in the wider operation was necessarily taken from the warehouse in the same manner. Some syrup was stolen. Other syrup entered the network through unauthorized purchases that deprived the Federation of its rights. The financial system around the heist became as important as the physical theft. Once syrup was removed from its original barrel and combined with other supplies, tracing it became extraordinarily difficult. There was no serial number dissolved inside the liquid. A stolen liter could look identical to a lawful liter. The product's greatest commercial strength, its uniformity, also protected the people trying to sell it. The operation continued into 2012, then came the moment that exposed it. During a warehouse inventory, an inspector climbed onto the stacked barrels. One shifted beneath him. A properly filled barrel should have been extremely heavy. This one was not. Further examination revealed that some barrels were empty, while others contained water rather than maple syrup. The warehouse that appeared full had been hollowed out from within. Contemporary reporting describes the unstable barrel as the discovery that triggered a deeper inspection. The revelation was almost accidental. The crime was not exposed by an alarm, a dramatic chase, or a witness approaching police. It was exposed by weight. One barrel did not behave as it should, and once investigators began checking the rows, the scale of the missing inventory became impossible to hide. Accounts commonly describe nearly 10,000 barrels as having been affected by the theft. The precise barrel count varies across reports depending on whether partially emptied, substituted, and recovered barrels are included. The most legally reliable figure is financial. Canada's Supreme Court stated that the stolen maple syrup connected to the prosecution had a market value exceeding 18 million Canadian dollars. That made the operation one of the largest agricultural thefts ever reported in Canada. But the number also represented losses beyond the liquid itself. The Federation faced missing inventory. Producers faced disruption and questions about the security of the collective system. Insurers and authorities had to determine which barrels had been altered, and legitimate buyers now had to wonder whether stolen syrup had entered ordinary distribution. The heist sounded humorous in headlines because the product was maple syrup. The consequences were not humorous. This was organized property crime involving millions of dollars, a long-running conspiracy, and a commodity central to thousands of producers. The Sûreté du Québec launched an investigation that would involve surveillance, searches, financial analysis, and cooperation across provincial boundaries. The Supreme Court later described it as the largest deployment of resources in the history of the provincial police for an investigation involving stolen tangible goods. The task was difficult. the original product had been transferred. Some had been sold, some had traveled through intermediaries, and some had reportedly crossed provincial borders. Investigators had to reconstruct not simply who entered the warehouse, but who transported, received, resold, and profited from the syrup. Following the syrup meant following money, vehicles, and relationships. Who had access to the warehouse? Who possessed the equipment required to move bulk liquid? Which buyers suddenly received large quantities from unusual suppliers? And which payments matched the timing of the missing inventory? Police raids and seizures eventually recovered part of the stolen supply, but a significant quantity had already entered the market or disappeared through the distribution network. Like melted gold, transferred syrup could lose the visible characteristics connecting it to the original crime. In 2016, Valliere was convicted of theft, fraud, and trafficking in property obtained by crime. The court concluded that at least 10 million Canadian dollars from the resale of stolen or fraudulently acquired syrup had been under his control. His acknowledged personal profit was much smaller, approximately 1 million Canadian dollars. But the legal battle would focus on whether he should repay only his profit or the full value that had passed through his hands. That question traveled all the way to Canada's Supreme Court. Canadian criminal law allows courts to order forfeiture of proceeds of crime. When the original property is gone, a court may impose a fine in place of forfeiture. The Quebec Court of Appeal had reduced the calculation dramatically, reasoning that the fine could reflect the approximately 1 million Canadian dollars in personal profit rather than the full revenue that had moved through him. The Crown appealed. The legal question was larger than maple syrup. Suppose a criminal receives $10 million from illegal property, pays accomplices and keeps 1 million. Has the offender possessed 1 million in criminal proceeds or 10 million? In March 2022, the Supreme Court restored the larger fine. The court ruled that a fine in lieu of forfeiture replaces criminal property that can no longer be seized. Its purpose is to remove the value of proceeds that were in the offender's possession or control, not merely the amount retained as profit. After subtracting restitution of $828,602 Canadian dollars and 43 cents, the final fine was set at $9,171,397 Canadian dollars and 57 cents. Valliere was given 10 years to pay. The syrup had long since moved on. Its financial value had not disappeared from the law. Here is what can be confirmed. Richard Valliere and Avik Caron planned to steal maple syrup from a Federation warehouse in Saint Louis de Blandford. Caron and accomplices organized the removal of syrup using trucks, tankers, and pumps. Some barrels were refilled with water or inferior syrup to delay discovery. Valliere received and resold stolen and fraudulently obtained syrup. The criminal enterprise lasted approximately 1 year. The stolen syrup involved in the prosecution had a market value exceeding 18 million Canadian dollars. Valliere admitted receiving 10 million Canadian dollars in resale revenue and making a personal profit approaching 1 million Canadian dollars. He was convicted of theft, fraud, and trafficking in property obtained by crime. In 2022, the Supreme Court of Canada imposed a fine exceeding 9 million Canadian dollars after accounting for restitution. What remains unknown is the complete journey of the stolen product. How much was consumed before police discovered the scheme? How many purchasers knew the syrup's origin? Could the theft have continued for another year if one barrel had not shifted during the inventory? The thieves took a product associated with family breakfasts and national tradition. But behind the unusual headline was a serious, organized crime network built on access, deception, and millions of dollars in illegal sales. The barrels remained in place, the syrup moved through the market, and one almost empty container finally exposed the entire operation. If you enjoyed this investigation, subscribe to Mysterious Crime. Like this video, share it with someone who loves documentaries, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next investigation.